Sudan, I worked side by side with a missionary who loved some of the most stereotyped people in the world, Muslims. And he gave day after day and year after year of his life towards developing relationships with Muslims, just so he might have one opportunity to pray with them and to share the gospel of Jesus, the truth with them.
The missionaries talk. It was almost like you have that romanced idea of what missions is. It's almost like the Christian version of Indiana Jones, you know, where you got the bugs and the snakes and you're cutting through the jungle to tell people about Christ. And you know what? Missions isn't like that at all.
You gotta remember, all these missionaries are Americans. They're out of their country. They're away. They're raising their families in these foreign countries. And you know, you think about what they have to do. They have to learn the language. They have to learn the culture. They have to change their lifestyle. They have to depend on support.
It definitely takes a lot to be a missionary. There's a lot of sacrifices that not only the missionaries have to make, but also their families as well. On my first mission trip, I worked with a missionary that had their family there. So not only did I get to see the sacrifices that the missionaries had to make, but also the sacrifices that their families had to make and how the children had to adapt to that lifestyle as well.
They don't get to see their family here in the States for birthdays or for Christmas and holidays, except for once every 4 years.
From New Orleans, for example, the main missionary or person who brought groups down there on a regular basis was constantly in the homes which had, you know, the black mold and were constantly exposed to really dangerous conditions. We were there a week, and you know, we had our masks and everything, and then we were out of there and we never had to deal with it again. But to think that they would go, and the missionary on this particular trip was quite older, and to think that he would go every week, and endure that day after day and not care, made me realize how giving that person is and how selfless they are, and how important it is to remember the ones that that endure through all of it. It's easy to go down there for a week and say, I can put up with this for a week. But it's a whole nother thing to make it an everyday part of your life and to really dedicate your life to it.
But I always know at the end of those 10 days I'm coming home, coming back to McDonald's, I'm coming back to eating the food I'm familiar with, my bed, you know, being able to meet with my family whenever, you know, and I gotta imagine that being a missionary and being on the field where you have to learn another language and be fluent in it in order to be able to buy groceries, in order to be able to just get around.
But the things they have to deal with between politics, logistics of having 20 or 40 or 60 people come down for a week, feeding them, transporting, arranging for a park to have this unbelievable revival in.
It's not home. And you got to take hats off to them for going out into these regions, going out into these areas, and really trying to save a nation that is so poor, so distraught, and without the Lord.
Out of there, I mean, we had a medical team down there, and you know, they were doing dental work, and they were just pulling out teeth because they couldn't even do fill cavities.
In India, I traveled all across the country with a missionary whose objective was to network with all the local churches around so that he could help them develop a stronger local church so that they in turn could reach the fellow Indians with the message of Jesus. In Austria, I walked university campuses with a missionary who spent his time gathering students that were atheists or didn't believe in God or didn't have any belief at all, and he would talk to them about the truth of Jesus, and he would share with them and had opportunities to pray with them, and they received salvation through his efforts on the university campuses all throughout Austria.
So imagine being baptized in a place like Afghanistan. So, you know, countries where you can't even admit you have missionaries, but yet they're there.
And that's the one word that the missionaries constantly use is, let's be flexible.
There was no scaffolding there. In this case, there was no wood of any kind there. We had to use mahogany, was the only wood available, and to my surprise, when it was delivered in horse and buggy. That's how.
In Mexico, I got to be a part of a team that saw a missionary that loved people so much that he would put his efforts into building houses for people that didn't even have a house. And these houses weren't normal. They were just like 1 or 2 room mud adobo huts, but they were better than what they had, and they were for widows and people that didn't have a home prior to that.
For instance, when I went to Poland on my mission trip, it was amazing to see how I mean, we were in Warsaw, developed city and everything, but outside Warsaw, third world country kind of a setting, and yet, you know, like I said, Home Depots are easily available here, but while we were in Poland, they had one specific store that the missionary had to go to purchase supplies, and the supplies there were so much money. A 2x4, it costs 15 American dollars, compared to here you can go get it for $2.50. So just the comparison, you know, it's something that every missionary, no matter where they're at in the world, even if within the United States, has to know the types of resources, you know.
Every person you meet in life is either a missionary or a mission field, and that really gave me a view, coming back here, a new perspective on relationships.
In Paraguay, I went from school to school to school with a missionary who at every single school and at every single stop would take the opportunity to share, clearly communicate the gospel of Jesus, and to give an altar call for all the children who had a heart for children, to see them come to Jesus at a young age. And even though it was long days, he would go from school to school to school to school to school, sharing the message of Jesus. In Peru, I experienced a missionary that would preach to stadiums and cities full of people and just proclaim the gospel of Jesus, and thousands would respond, thousands would come for salvation. And I saw a missionary that would stay up late and pray over each one of them with his own hands and his own mouth and lead them into the knowledge of Jesus Christ.
Everything that happens in our lives has nothing to do with us, but has everything to do with winning souls, winning souls, winning souls, winning souls.